Hey there, this is Matt with Flat Rate Internet Marketing here to talk to you about our web services workflow. So, the web services workflow is probably the most abstract workflow that we'll be presenting. And it mainly has to do with the fact that the work isn't spread out month to month like SEO and content, but rather it's spread out at the end of each month. So every month there's always a small website update. And usually that takes place in either the maintenance or security tab. So each of the steps that go with web services workflow are maintenance, security, asset management, best practices, and of course you get a monthly report that talks about this too. Maintenance is probably the smallest aspect. Usually it can take anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes to make sure that your website is properly maintained. This can be anything from updating plugins and themes to updating your PHP core to updating your WordPress platform overall. But the only real variance that you'll get is there's a lot of hard code on the website, CSS, JavaScript, or HTML as well. These are things that can potentially set back the time we have for a maintenance update, because if we can't update it because it's going to break code, then we have to be wary of that kind of fact. Next is security. So security is kind of broken up into three different sections. It's kind of, preventative, restorative, and then also, I would say, administrative almost. So preventative security comes in the form of firewalls more than anything else. We want to use either WebArcs or WordFence for each of our websites to make sure that people aren't able to brute force their way onto the website, and we can track what kind of attacks happen on a website on a regular basis. Backups are a really important one. So backups are done every month. A fresh backup is created for every site that we work with and archived, and then we keep backups on a rotating 3-month cycle. So if you have January, February, March, when April comes around, January goes away, because it's just the easiest way for us to manage this kind of information. And then finally, we have things like SSL certificates, privacy policies, GDPR compliance, things that involve storing data security, storing cookies, and processing payments online. So there are a few legal things that we have to watch out for, like the ability to at whim delete a user's information from our site. Privacy policies in terms of services need to be always updated for each website. SSL certificates, for the most part, is kind of like an automatic process, but sometimes we do go in and manually manage that. And then, of course, if we have anybody who operates overseas or operates internationally, EU law strictly states that we need to have GDPR compliance on each of our sites. Next is asset management. And this is probably the only one that has dual purpose. Asset management really goes along with SEO in a way. It's all about fixing page speed. So there are things like leveraging a CDN, which means content delivery network, which means anything from on-page copy to images and videos are split. So it's one server to load the framework, which is typically your standard server, and then a second server is used to handle that asset load so that our page speed can go down. So we work with either CDNs such as Cloudflares for the entire website. We use off-site assets like Publitio to kind of move the images and videos elsewhere. And then we also use plugins like Auto-Optimize and W3 Total Cache to create cache versions of our website that store the code so that a user doesn't have to refresh the code every time they load a new web page. Finally, we have best practices. So each of the things previously listed, such as the maintenance, security, and asset management, those are usually things that you want to do on a regular basis. You want to always manage this kind of information so that the website runs consistently and it doesn't have any hiccups security-wise and begins to work faster. But best practices come in store when Google tells us, usually using tools like WebDev, Search Console, Page Speed Insights. It creates a bunch of information for us as web developers to go in and fix a website. Yeah, the website runs great, but maybe it doesn't run great on mobile. Oh, maybe the very first part of the page or the first page paint isn't as good as it should be. Maybe if we reduce the image size and bring in copies sooner, we can create a better user experience. So like with anything that involves speculation and design, there's never a perfect system. But what we like to do is do this about once in every quarterly session, every 90-day game plan. We like to focus on doing this so that we can do two things. One, it's overall better to improve your web dev report. Generally, it's Google's adherence to it. So we want to try and listen to one of the top search engines. But the other part is it gives us an opportunity to really test and see if these changes have any impact on user experience or if they have any impact on page speed and thus SEO. So we like to always make a note as to when the web dev changes happen to see if they create a spike in website performance, ranking, anything like that. Finally, there's reporting. There's not a lot of reporting that we can do for web development. So what we do like to try and do is we like to send out a before and after of the web dev report. So we like to create a hard copy before we make any changes and then do it again and record the changes that have been done. It's probably the least visually interesting, report that we give out, but it is also pretty vital in terms of tracking how really time consuming it can be to make individual changes like this on a massive scale.